is true in its nature. It cannot be stopped, but it goes on continuing, it goes on multiplying. So, when we want to study Ayurveda and know what the vital body is, the science of homeopathy is a good corroboration to the theory of the vital body of Ayurveda. So, in the Ayurvedic text also, we have the proposition of the vital body as being the main body, which contains the causes of health and which contains also the causes of disease whenever we default with certain things. Here, according to Ayurveda, the vital body is described as a triangle of forces because it has three working centers. The technical terms used are as follows. It is Vata, which means pulsation. The second is Pitta, which means combustion. And the third is called Sleshma, which means precipitation. So, there are three centers, functioning centers in the vital body, according to the Ayurveda. And the three function in three different ways. The one which is represented in the epics, it causes the inheritance of pulsation by us also. And it presides over the activity of expansion and contraction. In Sanskrit it is called prana. And we can call it the phenomenon of peristalsis. We find the lungs contracting and expanding. We find the heart muscles contracting and expanding. We find the circulatory system, that is the veins and the arteries, contracting and expanding. We find the various parts of the alimentary canal contracting and expanding to affect the function of digestion and assimilation. But we should not think that these muscles and nerves have the function of contraction and expansion. The contraction and expansion belong to the vital body and not the physical tissues. And the vital body causes the various tissues to contract and expand. To conduct this function, that particular center is working in our vital body. And the center is roughly located on the physical plane in the region which we call the lungs and the heart. But remember, the center is not physical in its nature at all. And also remember that the location is only a very tough business we do. Because location is in itself physical by nature, whereas functioning is different and non-physical. But roughly speaking, these functions begin their manifestation from the area which we call the heart and lungs. So, that activity of that particular center is called Vata, which exactly means peristalsis. That is the alternation of contraction and expansion. And then about the second functioning center. It is always producing an activity which we can call combustion. That is burning the material to be used as fuel. We have seen how in the Purusha Sukta, the Purusha is burnt in the sacrifice. Here, the various substances in the body are burnt to utilize. For example, some chemicals of the blood tissue are burnt by the fire of oxygen in the lungs and release the calories of heat to be transmuted into energy in the body. There is another center which we call the digestive system, which causes the combustion of the food materials in the name of digestion, so that some more calories of heat are released from the fuel used as food. Similarly, there is another center of combustion that is working in the head, that conducts the process of combustion, which we call thinking. And another center is there far lower down in our body, that burns some tissues on the lower regions and translates that energy in terms of what we call the sex activity. Like this, there are many combustion centers in our body, and all these centers are presided over the main combustion center called Pitta, which exists physically somewhere near what we call the gaster, and which is in the yogic science, which is called the navel center. It is also called the Manipuraka chakra. So there is the second center called the combustion center. And there is a third center which is called Sleshma. That means precipitation. You know how certain chemical combinations produce precipitates of matter. This third functional center presides over the activity of cell producing or cell manufacturing in our body. The various cells of the tissues, that is the muscular tissue, the bony tissue and the nerve tissue. These tissues are made up of cells, and these cells are made up of chemicals, and the production of these cells out of these chemicals is conducted by this third center. So the one center produces tissues, the other center consumes the tissues, releasing energy in the form of calories of heat, and the third center keeps the equilibrium by making the required pulsations. So this is the basic information about the understanding of the human constitution in Ayurveda. If you are not too tired, we will go into the next way of understanding. Some more understanding about these functional centers of the etheric body. When functioning naturally, these three centers produce three products. The first center does not produce any physical material at all, but it produces what we call the nerve grip. After the nerve tissue material is produced by the third center, and the next center produces what we call acids in the constitution, and chiefly it produces the gastric juices and the chemicals like peptin, etc. And also it produces the iron compounds in the blood, which play with the oxygen in respiration and help the combustion of the carbon tissues. So wherever acidic substances are required, they are produced by the second center as the physical products of the non-physical activity. And the third center produces what we call alkaloids, which are antiacids, and also what we call the products of carbon and hydrogen, that is the sugars and the starches, and also the nitrates, and also the vitamins, and also the proteins. So the physical tissue matter, which we call the protoplasm of our body, and the cytoplasm of the various cells, along with the fats and oils of what we call plastids, are produced by the third cell. When these three functions of the vital body are uniform, this triangle of forces exists as an equilateral triangle, and the result is the proper production of the tissue material and the proper functioning of the tissues. Any disturbance due to an external cause, which can be admitted only by the mind, whether it is in the conscious state or unconscious state or subconscious state, unless the mind admits a violence of law, more correctly a violation of the law, there cannot be any disharmony in the function of the three centers of the vital body. And when once disharmony is produced, these three factories, instead of producing the products, they begin to produce their byproducts. The same chemicals are used to produce some nonsensical chemicals, which are not at all welcome to the functions of the body. And the three centers produce the three byproducts. The pulsation center produces what we call the wind formation in various parts of the body, accumulation of wind. For example, we say there is flatulence in the stomach. There is the activity of what we call the belchings. I don't know what they are called. The electricians, people say, so it makes the people sing and bawl out and dance. Okay. That is what is called the byproduct of the first center. And the second center produces too much acids, and the result is what we call acidity and other such troubles. You see how there is burning sensation in the stomach in the morning for some people daily. When some people eat substances with some oils, see how the oil is translated into acids the next day morning, and they will have burning not only in the stomach but also in the alimentary canal and in the throat also. And since it is acidic and very strongly acidic in its nature, it produces ulceration in the stomach and in the various parts of the alimentary canal, and it produces sore mouth too often, and the uptake. So this is called the production of acidity. Then what is the use of eating medicines called antiacids? When the body produces 10 grams of acid, we are asked to swallow 20 grams of antiacid in the name of tablets. As a result, tomorrow our body produces 25 grams of acid. And when we are asked to swallow 4 tablets, so instead of the health of the patient, it is the business of the pharmacist that improves gradually. Of course, that is also good in one way. You know how the celebrated author P.G. Woodhouse describes the whole thing. Woodhouse. One gentleman was sick in the stomach. He went to the doctor and had a consultation, paid the fee and brought the prescription, took the prescription to the pharmacy and purchased the medicine, brought home the medicines and put them on the table, called the wife and asked her to bring a cup of warm water. She brought the water thinking the husband is going to swallow the medicine properly. But the husband swallowed the warm water and have thrown the medicines through the window out. Then the wife questioned, "What the hell you mean by this?" Then the husband gently and smilingly answered, "I am sick, therefore I went to the doctor. Because the doctor has to live, I went to the pharmacy and purchased the medicine. Because the pharmacist and the manufacturer of the medicine have to live. Now I throw the medicine out of the window because I too have to live." So it is moral to believe that everyone should live. So this is a story about antiacids. And the third center produces its own byproduct, which we call the mucus of the various mucous membranes. What we call the diseased discharges of the various parts of the body. Mainly the phlegm which we cough and throw it out, and the discharge of the otoritis from the ear, and the discharge of the cataract of the nose. In India it is called running of the nose. So the patient runs in the nose. And also the discharges from the eyes, and the various types of discharges from the various layers of the membranous tissues, and also what we call the mucus in the intestines. These are called the byproducts of the 3 working centers, which are inevitable to be produced whenever there is a defaultation. And each of these byproducts produce a group of manifestations which we wrongly call diseases. I just mildly warn you to be careful about the translations of the Ayurvedic textbooks into the various languages. The very function of the center, when it is healthy, is often wrongly translated as the byproduct. For example, the first functioning center, which we call Vata, is itself translated as wind. And the very functional center of Pitta is translated as bile, and the very functional center of Shleshma is also equally wrongly translated as the phlegm. So these 3 are described as the basis with which the body is built. So to say, the reader who reads the translation is unfortunate in understanding that the body is made up of phlegm and bile and some nonsensical thing. So be a bit careful about the translation of the terms. Whenever you find some trouble with the translation of the first basic 3 functioning centers, you can substitute the terms translated by me here, and the rest of the translation is quite good. You can rely upon the books. Just have a substitution of 3 terms and you can understand the books of Ayurveda very well. So, 3 groups of diseases are said to arise in our body. This is another aspect of Ayurvedic thought. And now, let us proceed to a more important and practical aspect, that is the science of maintaining health and the practical steps that are given to us. He has given us some items in the daily routine which we are expected to observe, provided we want a healthy and vigorous body working until the last moments. And he calls disease by the name defaultation, and he calls the sufferings of the disease by the name atonements. Atonements, that is a type of punishment to the defaultation. So he advises us not to evade the suffering but to rectify the health. In this we find a good parallelism in Hahnemann also. He says that symptoms are messengers to carry the message that there is something wrong in the constitution. And never try to cure the symptoms. That is what Hahnemann says. Symptoms do not form part of disease. If you select medicines to cure symptoms, it is only a process of hush up you are taking up. That is, you are shutting up the mouths of the messengers, not allowing them to give you the news of the enemies attacking the fortress. And the result is always dangerous and costly. And he says that every attempt to cure this symptom adds one stone to lead the person into incurability and grave. In Ayurveda also, the symptoms and the sufferings are called Vedanas. The word Vedana means indicator. It indicates that something is wrong in the constitution, and therefore don't use medicines to kill Vedanas. For example, don't manufacture medicines for headache. If anyone is foolish to manufacture, don't use it. Same is the case with all the scientific painkillers which we know today. And same is the case with all the tranquilizers we use daily. Instead of curing the disease, they tranquilize the man. They will assure him that there is nothing wrong there inside going. And the crisis goes on without the knowledge of man because he is flattered by the tranquilizers. We know how the index and the percentage of health has fallen down during the past 3 decades after the advent of these tranquilizers. Same warning is given in the Ayurveda also. And about the use of medicines and drugs, there is one difference between homeopathy and Ayurveda. In homeopathy, you are expected to select a remedy to cure you, a remedy which is capable of producing similar group of symptoms that the patient is having.
Car le patient,
In Ayurveda, you are permitted to select a remedy, but every remedy should be administered along with a life-saving substance. A substance which is essentially nutritive by nature. A substance which is readily absorbed by any type of constitution, however weak and debilitated the constitution may be. There should be a food base for every medicine introduced. That is one essential thing that Ayurveda instructs the doctor. Never use a medicine independently. First use a non-medicinal nutritive substance as the base. Either a few moments before the medicine or along with the medicine mixed. And that substance is called in Sanskrit Anupana. The word means that is to be consumed along with the medicine. And for this purpose, two types of substances are recommended. One is called the substances of the nutritive group and the substance of the equalizing group. That is, there are certain substances in nature that directly feed your life impulse and the vital body. It's not the physical body that is to be fed, because it is the vital body that causes the physical body capable of assimilating the food. That's why it is warned many times in the science of Ayurveda that your strength lies in the capacity to assimilate, but not the quality and the nutritive aspect of the fuel you use. See, beef is highly nutritive, but for a patient who is suffering from temperature for about 40 days or 30 days, when he is too weak, what happens if you give him beef? There is no doubt that beef is very strong and it gives strength, but it immediately kills the patient, because the strength of a living biological organism lies in the assimilating capacity of the being, but not at all upon the quality of the food that is presented. That's the reason why, even though we feed the weak patients with many vitamins, even we use multivitamin tablets and syrup daily, they all go a waste. And the moment you stop vitamins, the patient goes into debility once again. It is your capacity to absorb vitamins from the food materials that makes your health. And it is not the shortage of vitamins in this universe that makes patients weak. So you are not wise in gathering and supplying vitamins to the weak fellows. You should select something to open up the gates of the etheric body and make the vitamin absorbing capacity improve. That capacity exists in the vital body, not physical body at all. Therefore, the capacity to absorb should be taken as the cause of the span of this body. The capacity to absorb depends upon the energy centers in our body. And as you theosophical scientists and the students of the Tibetan masters know, that the energy centers do not exist on the physical body at all. They exist on the etheric body. They are the functioning vital centers that are working as whirlpools. What is a whirlpool made up of? It is made up of an equilibrium of forces which makes